All right, everyone. Well, welcome to today's webinar, InfraWorks 360 Web and Mobile Viewing. My name is Eric Chappell, Community Evangelist for InfraWorks 360, and with me today is Markus Briglmeir, Product Manager for InfraWorks 360, and Markus is going to be our primary speaker today. Before we turn it over to him, though, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our InfraWorks 360 community. So in our webcast series, so if this is your first time with us for the webcast series, welcome. We've been doing this twice a month on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. So keep watching our various community channels for information on upcoming webcasts. The goal of the webcast series is to inform you about the product and what's going on with the product, what features are available, what features are coming. And we want to do this from the perspective of the product team. We want you to hear from the folks who actually put the product together. And it'll also give you a chance to ask questions and provide feedback. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And just generally speaking, we want to bring our users and our makers of the software closer together so we can better understand each other. Our next webcast is going to be about the InfraWorks 360 traffic simulation preview. Really exciting technology that we're working on. So if you've heard about that and you're interested in testing that out and learning more about what it's intended to do, please join us for this webcast on July 15th, same time, 12 to 1 Eastern. And again, watch our various community channels for information on how to sign up, how to register for that webcast. So we've got the community site, we've got the forum. You can see the URLs listed there on the slide. And also we post information about upcoming webcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So watch all those areas for more information. Other webcast topics that we're thinking about, I mentioned traffic simulation. We're also looking at, we've got a labs project for flood simulation called Project Boulder. We're looking at as our August 5th presentation. Then we're looking at field assets on August 19th, and then collaboration on September 2nd. And you'll see some other topics that we're kicking around presenting as well. If you ever have any ideas for topics that you'd like us to present, please let us know. Either you could type it in the questions panel here in the webcast, and we'll pick it up there, or send us an email or visit the forum, whatever. Let us know if there's a topic that you want us to present. Speaking of that, I had a poll that I wanted to show you guys, and actually we have one poll now and a few more later on that have to do specifically with what Markus is going to talk about. For our poll right now, we want to know, and we've been conducting this poll with each webcast. We want to know what your usage level is with InfraWorks 360. So if you could please provide your answer. I'll leave the poll open for a minute or so. We want to know what your usage level of InfraWorks 360 is, and of course we're looking for growth here as we conduct the webcast series. And I haven't checked the results recently and compared them to other months, but it seems like we're definitely seeing an upward trend with usage of the product. We're definitely getting down into those third and fourth areas where folks are either dabbling or using it regularly. Of course, we'd love to see 100% on that last choice, which is can't live without it, and we're certainly working in that direction. So I'm going to leave the poll open for about another 10 seconds, so if you haven't provided your answer, please do so. I've got about 77% who've actually voted, so we've got a few people out there who haven't yet. Give it about 5 more seconds and we will close it down. So it looks like we've got a fair amount of regular users, which is good news. A little bit more about the community. The main community portal is the URL that you see up there, autodesk.com/InfraWorks360community. There's really cool stuff on there. There's a feed from the InfraWorks 360 forum, which is actually quite active. We've got, probably a dozen or so new posts every day on the forum about people asking questions or providing input about how to use the product. And these are other users like you, not necessarily Autodesk employees, although we do chime in and help out and try to provide answers. We've also got the gallery where you can submit images and videos of InfraWorks 360 projects that you're working on, and kind of for some bragging rights, show the world what you're doing and even get some feedback. You know, folks can comment on your work, they can give it kudos or likes, and ask questions. A lot of folks are interested a lot of times in how you did things. How did you come up with certain content and that sort of thing. We've also got the Social Hub, which is a live feed from Facebook and Twitter and various blogs that tend to feature a lot of InfraWorks 360 content. We've got our Videos tab, which shows recordings from previous webcasts, as well as any kind of videos that are related to InfraWorks 360. A ton of new videos were just posted on the latest June update, by the way. So if you're not familiar with all the new features in the June update, tons of new videos up on the community site dealing with those. And then if you want to know how to register for an upcoming webcast or see a recording of a prior webcast, that's up there as well. The forum I mentioned earlier, another great place to see what other people are doing, get answers to questions from other users. And we've also got our idea station there. So if you've got ideas about how you'd like to see Autodesk improve InfraWorks 360, you can post your ideas there. You can have other users vote on them, so you can gather support for your ideas. And as you might guess, the more support you get for an idea, the more likely it is to be implemented by our product team. So, and also you'll see interactions there with the product team. They change the status, they ask for questions, ask for clarification. It's just really interesting to see the development process at work in the Idea Station, and anyone can participate in that. So if you haven't visited the Idea Station, please do. We may talk about some things that are either preview or lab features in this presentation. So please know that anything that falls into that category, whether preview or labs, there's no guarantee that it will ever appear in the software, and really the only guarantee that a feature will ever be in the software is if you actually see it there in a current release. So have to make that disclaimer for every webcast so that folks are clear on that. Please ask lots of questions. Unfortunately, we can't open the phone lines because of the size of our group. It just sounds like a zoo, but we can take questions via chat window. Halil is joining us as well from the product team, so while Markus is talking, Halil is going to be available to answer your questions via the chat window, myself as well, although Halil's the expert, so I'm going to give him first chance at all of the answers. But please ask lots of questions. If there are any that are kind of recurring themes or particularly interesting, I might break in and ask Markus to answer them verbally over as part of his presentation. So the more questions, the better. It makes the presentation more interesting and more engaging. So please submit your questions. There's no such thing as a bad question, so please ask. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Markus. I'll change presenters, and he's going to take you through web and mobile viewing. It's all yours, Markus.
Yeah, thanks, Eric, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Markus Briglmeir, Product Manager for InfraWorks 360, especially for the web part. My colleague Halil is on the call as well. As Eric mentioned, we are both based in Switzerland, where Autodesk runs a large development office for InfraWorks and other infrastructure products of Autodesk. So I'm happy that you joined in such numbers. So the agenda I thought would be really interesting for you is just to introduce the new InfraWorks web viewer. Then the second topic is challenges for web viewing. That's more in general, but especially things as well that we see where our customers struggle in using the software, but where we think we have addressed some parts of that nicely. Then based on those challenges, some best practices. How do you really publish a model from desktop to the browser for viewing in the browser? And then an outlook, what we are doing next in the InfraWorks 360 web team. So what we plan to do, what will go to a rolling sandbox as a preview. And finally, if you have some time, I just show you some examples from customers or some we did here with our models. So first I want to show you what the current status of the InfraWorks 360 web is. So once you open the web viewer, you get, especially if you're an administrator, you get all the models that you publish to the web for viewing in the browser window. So there's no installation. It works on any browser, on PC and tablets. We are not focusing on mobile phones yet. It's working, but it's not our focus. So the focus is really on browsers, on tablets and PCs or laptops. So on what you see here are all the models that you published for viewing or someone else published and added you to his InfraWorks 360 user group. The look and feel is really exactly as on the desktop, so you can search and sort and finally open one of the models. Let's go for this one. And you see the whole model is published to the browser. You'll get a top view of the model and oblique view, which gives you an oblique viewing angle, a bird's eye view onto your model. And based on that model, you see different markers. Those indicate, for example, here the blue ones. Those are scenarios. And scenarios is a technology we use for InfraWorks since some years for web viewing. So some of you might know that. So scenarios are basically a part of the model that you define on the desktop and then publish for viewing in the web. I try not to zoom and pan too much here and hope that it's broadcasted smoothly to your screens. So that's a scenario. And as you see here, it's really isolated without any context to your whole model. So if someone sees that, he really needs to know the model we are talking about. This is an example of Dubai. But it's isolated and without context of the whole model. But that is what we had since 2 or 3 years within InfraWorks, the so-called scenario viewer. Okay? So, but that has some limitations. We saw the models got larger and larger. People have huge models of whole cities, of course, of whole, at least smaller states, highway or train corridors with dozens of kilometers. So these large models won't work within the scenario viewer. They are simply too large. That's why in the last 1.5 years, we worked on this viewer you see here now. Still using the scenarios, but now the scenarios are embedded into this whole model view and indicated by those blue markers that show the areas, the extents of the scenario, which opens a new tab and you can zoom and navigate in full 3D. But scenarios have its limitations, as I said, especially when you bring in very large models, 3D models from Revit, from 3ds Max, from SketchUp and others. That's why we came up with so-called panoramas. Those are the pink markers here. And those indicate or embed a pop-up that gives you a full 3D 360-degree view from a defined point of view. And here it doesn't matter if this model here in the background, it's a huge hotel coming from a 3ds Max file. This file is pretty large and really hard to manage and to display in a scenario. But here with the panoramas, it's very easy because we render them on the Autodesk servers for you, And for the viewers using tablets or PC browsers, it's very fast, although the model actually is pretty large. Okay, so it's a combination of scenarios here, still the old technology which is embedded, and the panoramas. We have some more here. Let's go down here where we saw the scenario first. Those can be from underground, you know, looking at pipes or drainage systems. They can show the model overview, or definitely go into a detailed view then, like here of the view of this new beach resort. Yeah, and high quality, so you get all the reflections. 3D models that are embedded into your desktop model get published through nicely. Okay, that's where we are at the moment. So how do you define scenarios and panoramas? Scenario is actually unchanged on the desktop. You define the extents, give a name, and publish that. For panorama views, these are basically the bookmarks on the desktop. So far, users had no chance to publish bookmarks to the web browser and guide their viewers to certain positions in their model. This was a customer request, and with panoramas, we publish those bookmarks and they will get panoramas in the web viewer. So let's look at another one, maybe down here. Where are we? Let's see here. That's the new metro line of Dubai. So this is a bookmark on the desktop, and the initial viewing direction from the desktop, that's the initial viewing direction of your panel. You get back to that if you hit that button at the bottom here. And of course you can navigate around here, but the viewpoint, yeah, where you start viewing, that's really exactly the bookmark position from the desktop. Of course, you are not totally free to navigate in 3D, so you cannot, let's say, walk along this road or railway track. This maybe is a trade-off, but on the other hand, you can guide viewers to the viewpoints you want them to look at. So usually the models are pretty large, as you see here. With the panoramas, you can really say, I want my viewers look at this position. I want them having a look from that position of the Marine Center, and so on. So it's a way to guide the users and group the panoramas, the bookmarks, around your areas of interest. Okay, going back to the slide deck here. So for the, I put the wording old here. So the current scenario viewer runs on browsers, and there's an iPad as well, iPad app as well, but no app for Android. So customers asked, why don't you do an app for Android as well? So we took another approach and said, okay, come on, we go the direction of panoramas, and that's available on all browsers, no matter of Android or iOS or any other system. So scenarios, as I said, are a limited area of interest. With the new web viewer, you can really publish a whole model. You get still this scenarios in the context of that whole model. And additionally, you get panoramas which are created from the bookmarks. In the new web viewer, you need to be online. It's like Google Maps, right? For the old scenario viewer, I need to say for the iPad app of the scenario viewer, there's an offline mode as well. So that's something that's working a little bit differently, but we choose to go the way that you need to be offline, as people know, yeah, from Bing or Google Maps. What you saw so far, that is what we released with the 16.2 release 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is still in preview mode, so we are working We are still working on that, improving that, looking for the feedback that we get from users, and that is really, really possible because it's so easy to publish and so easy to view. And it needs to be easy because our target user group is basically the public citizen who is not a CAD or GIS guy who knows all software or how to use complex software. The target user is really a user who has no clue of how to deal with a 3D model, who might be able to navigate, might be able to see some attributes later, stuff like that. But basically we assume that the CAD or GIS knowledge is not there. So it's a really public citizen. Nevertheless, we know that there are more technical affine folks as well. But those are, I would say, the second user group we are targeting to. Okay, so what are the challenges for both viewers? Actually, the challenges are that the models we see in InfraWorks get complexer and complexer. So people bring in data from Model Builder, which allows you to define an area on Bing Maps, and InfraWorks creates the model for you. The model can be large, up to 200 square kilometers and more. People add 3D models from 3ds, from SketchUp, from Revit, from other Autodesk or third-party tools. So really big models, big files that people expect to work in the web viewer. And that's really challenging, and that's an area where we see the limits of the scenario viewer. Okay, so model complexity, model size. And in its early days, we assumed that the people use InfraWorks primarily to create new proposals, new designs with the road module, with the bridge module, creating new buildings, new water areas, things like that. But we see another user group that's using InfraWorks primarily to visualize their existing assets. So that's a different focus, not using so much the design tools of InfraWorks, but more focusing on the visualization. And that's another challenge we had, because the scenario viewer is very good in visualizing InfraWorks assets, like InfraWorks roads, InfraWorks bridges, InfraWorks buildings, and so on, but wasn't made for visualizing those 3D models primarily. So all in all, we still have the scenario viewer, but the focus is definitely on the InfraWorks 360 web. As I said, on all browsers and tablets, allows to publish your whole models to your viewers. Panoramas and scenarios are visualized in the context of the whole model. Bookmarks are published as panoramas, so you have a way to guide users where to look at, and there's a need to be online. Okay, so now best practices, especially the point with large 3D models that people import into InfraWorks on the desktop. Yeah, so this is like an example of a 5 megabyte Revit building. And InfraWorks offers a possibility to reduce the complexity of those models during import. No matter if it's a Revit model, an FBX model, an OBJ, or other models. So that's always the way to simplify the model. So those two buildings were imported, and one is or hasn't been simplified. So it's the original file, 1:1, and the other one has been simplified down to 10% of its original complexity. So it's really hard to see which is which. Okay, especially for buildings. A lot of times we see that the buildings have a really complex interior like this building has, you know, chairs and desks with 10,000s and 100,000s of polygons. So that's what you see in a screenshot on the right side. Okay. So once you import a 3D model into InfraWorks 360, there's this configuration dialog you might know for all the data sources you bring in, but especially for 3D models, there's the option to simplify the model. Usually it's by default 100%, so which means it doesn't simplify. And we played around using 50%, going down to 3, 5, or 10%. And 10% again is just an example here. Yeah. With the 10%, of course, the number of triangles is reduced. You can see that in the wireframe that you can turn on in InfraWorks. The one on the top, that's not simplified, and the other one is simplified to 10%. And you see, of course, the number of triangles is reduced. If you look at the image or the comparison on the right side, on the very right side, of course it gets simplified. But if you are in the whole model, those hydrant, for example, it's really hard to see that. Unless you zoom in that close, then you would see that effect. That happens for 10% in this very example. For sure, you need to play around with different settings depending on the models you want to import. So now I measured how long it takes to open a scenario with different settings for this simplification. And you see, if you don't simplify, then the scenario size has been 180 megabytes. So the scenario is not only the building, the 3D Revit model, there's another stuff in this example. And if the scenario is too large to display in the browser, then 3D models are simply turned off by the scenario viewer. Yeah, the rest is displayed. And in this example, without simplification, it won't display the 3D model. Even if you simplify to 50%, it doesn't display. But then if you go down to 25 or 10%, scenario size goes down and the time that is needed to load the scenario is reduced dramatically. This is just an example on my network here. So definitely different results for models you might use. And this is the solution of our little quiz. So the building on the left side was the one that was not simplified, and the one on the right side, including the hydrant, of course, was simplified. And of course, if you look close, you might now say, oh, I know the one on the right side was simplified. But this is, I think, definitely enough quality for the web viewer. Okay, and you get a large performance gain. Okay, so this is something you can do during importing 3D models coming from 3ds or any other 3D tools out there. Again, best practice for scenarios, actually on the same topic. We see very, very large models coming in, and those models have a size of some 100 megabytes, you know, especially 3ds max files. And here an additional trick is to use Navisworks. So Navisworks comes with all the infrastructure design suites, and Navisworks has a way to drag and drop a 3D model into a Navisworks project file. It lets you display the polygons. And again, I use this Revit building we saw before, and this has 1.5 million polygons. So it's really a lot. And once you do that in Navisworks, of course, you can view how many or see how many polygons this 3D model has. But if you export to FBX, for example, it lets you reduce those polygons to a certain number. So in this case, the building had 1.5 million polygons. I played around and reduced it to 100,000 polygons, and it really dramatically reduced the size. I didn't do any other tweaks, just played around. And the quality, the visual quality was still good and enough for viewing in a scenario. Okay, so the first thing you definitely need to do for scenarios is simplify 3D models when they are large. If you have smaller ones, that's fine, no worries there. So then people tend to bring in models really 10, 100 or 1,000 times. So this, of course, multiplies what you bring in. So if possible, then try to reduce really the 3D content. People tend to do that, especially for trees, when they have a data file from the tree cadastre that brings in 1 million trees of a city, for example. And tree models, 3D models, can be really complex. There, even in InfraWorks, are some, like the screenshot here on the top, that is really detailed. Yeah, which doesn't make much sense in that detail grade. So make sure if you have 3D models that are, need to be displayed a lot of times, then make sure that you have a simple one. For sure, we should work on the content there that InfraWorks brings with, because there are really some really complex and detailed 3D trees, which of course look great, but slow down the performance on desktop and web. And for scenarios, the last tip actually is to reduce the extent. Once you define a scenario on the desktop, there's the option to say a whole model. So this is definitely with the models that we see nowadays, not a clever solution. So really try to reduce the scenario extents, what you see in blue here, to really what you want your users to see in full navigation 3D. Okay? All these things don't apply for panoramas. So panorama really renders an image from the bookmark position. This is rendered on Autodesk 360 rendering. So on Autodesk servers, this takes a while, but once it's rendered, it's pretty fast, no matter how large your 3D model has been. So another thing I want to make you aware of, once you see this model selection page in the browser, so this is in the browser, looks like the desktop, but this is the browser model selection page. You see all your models, but sometimes you see some scenarios. How do you see what is a scenario? A scenario brings a scenario size with it. So actually all of those here in the screenshot are scenarios. Only the one here, down here, Ingolstadt.new, that's a model. So usually you don't see scenarios here, because scenarios are part of the model, right? So why do I see scenarios here? So this can be very old scenarios, which you created last year or 2 or 3 years ago, where we didn't have the possibility to render the whole model. So these are usually, we call them orphan scenarios. So that's when you see scenarios here. The only other reason might be if the model publishing failed, wherever on the server, and only the scenarios got created. But that's a defect in the, not a defect, but that's an issue in the model publishing dialog then, and shouldn't happen. Usually it's really orphaned old scenarios that you see here. So I come to that later, how to fix that. And the other thing is, if you look at those model thumbnails, some look okay, like that for Ingolstadt down here, shows a nice view onto the city. Some like those here, St. Basilius or Las Vegas Pawn Stars, this just doesn't say anything to the user. Yeah, it's of course correct. It shows the scenario extent, but you should take care when you define those thumbnails. And those thumbnails are defined for scenarios and for the whole model. And this is what we talk about here. So the first, how do I deal with those orphan scenarios? It's pretty easy. You can delete them online if you want. So in the desktop, there's this Manage Online Models and Scenarios where you can delete models, including scenarios, or delete these orphaned scenarios. Or you simply republish the model, including those scenarios, then you're done. So that's pretty easy. For the scenarios thumbnail, these thumbnails are defined during the definition process for the scenarios. So there's a scenario editor. There you have the possibility to set a home position for the scenario. Yeah, InfraWorks creates one by default. So, but here make sure you zoom in close to the object you are referring to, and then your thumbnail will look great. And the same for model thumbnail. So those are the thumbnails for the models on the selection page. And here again, open the model on the desktop, zoom to the location you want to have, and then in the settings and utilities dialog, there's this button, update thumbnail, and you really get a nice thumbnail like here for Dubai or Moscow, or in this case, Istanbul. So this is really a way to help users open the right model. Yeah, and this is true for the desktop and the web viewer. So it's the same scenario. Sorry, the same thumbnail file or image. Okay, pretty easy as well, but we see a lot how let's say ugly ties people are showing here. So best practices for panoramas. This is a really difficult part for me because there are no best practices because it's so easy. So you define the bookmark on the desktop and sync the model. The only thing you might take care of is that you define your bookmark with a nice viewing angle and your viewing direction, but that's what people do anyway. So actually there's no real best practice. For example, for that basilica, it would make sense to place several panoramas around it from different viewing angles or different viewing directions, maybe one from top as well, to get a nice guidance for the user. So for panoramas, you define them, you sync the model, and that's it. Okay. So what we saw so far is what was released as a preview. And as I said, I want to give you a small outlook what we are working on right now. And we released that to Rolling Sandbox already. So this is the beta platform for InfraWorks. You can take part, you can sign on to that and have a look on the upcoming, it's not the upcoming features, but that are features that the teams are working on and might get into the official product if the customer feedback is good. So feel free to sign up. I posted the link here, or put the link into the slide deck here. So on Rolling Sandbox, we introduced an additional type of marker. So not only the blue one for scenarios and the pink or red one for panoramas, but this yellow or orange one. And this marker is a point of interest that was published from the desktop into the browser. So point of interest is nothing new on the desktop. It lets you define a position with a symbol on the desktop. You can add information into or attach information to that point of interest. Maybe you import a file with point of interest of, I don't know, sightseeing highlights of a city or something like that. Then you can publish through or add attributes. So there's an editor to bring in attributes to this point of interest. Or you can define a link or an HTML tooltip, as you see here, which gives you a lot of opportunities and flexibilities to bring in your own pictures, text, links, and way more. And it allows you to add additional information to your project to link to external files, which can be a video, can be a 3D file, can be another project, whatever you have in mind, or simply bring in additional information for points of interest or the whole project or whatever you have in mind here. So let's have a look at that briefly. And as I said, this is not released. This is on Rolling Sandbox, and we are right now looking what customers are saying to those markers. So you see I played around a little bit here. So there are two markers. One, for example, is a simple hyperlink which goes to a web page, project web page, Autodesk web page, whatever you want. Then you might want to link to videos, for example, external videos. You might want to define an HTML tooltip. So there's a nice editor on the desktop which allows you to do stuff like that. An HTML tooltip can include links as well, of course, or list things, or bring in attributes from your point of interest asset, and so on. It as well, let's go here, there's a 3D building. Yeah, another possibility would be to link to a recording. So you might know that InfraWorks desktop embeds a screencast, which lets you create a video, or you use the storyboard editor to create a video out of InfraWorks. So this is another possibility to use a point of interest to link to an online video, as you see here. Quick try from my side. Or you link to a 3D building like that, which, for example, can be on your A360 drive. In this case, it's a 3DS building bibliothèque. So let's go closer here. So this is the 3D viewer which Fusion 360 is using, or A360, which allows you to bring in, 3DS model, DWG model, 3D model, Revit models, and so on. With some possibilities by default, hide parts of the asset. Maybe you wanna do something like that. Cut through the model. Not sure how well it comes through the web here. So in any case, it's a nice way to link to 3D content somewhere. This can even be an exported section of an InfraWorks model, including terrain and everything, which you export as FBX, and then drag and drop into your A360 account here. Okay. Finally, link to that to a point of interest. Or maybe something like that, using the storyboard editor on InfraWorks desktop, which lets you create a video, and you could link that video, if it's on YouTube, into that HTML tooltip. Yeah, so a lot of possibilities for customization, for additional information to your online model of InfraWorks 360 web. So if I wrap up here, so we have the scenarios, yeah, the old technology, but still embedded here. We have panorama view that you really render even large models, large size. Yeah. We have the points of interest on the rolling sandbox now, and all those markers are embedded into those whole model views, which you can render from desktop. Okay. At the moment, it's in preview. It's for free to use. So we'll add additional features to that. But at the moment, it's for free. to use. So, and very easy to use. So simply use your model, publish it to the web browser. It's a sync dialog you might know from the desktop. Very easy. Actually, that. So maybe we have a look at some other examples. We saw that one. We saw that one. We could go to that. Of course, the not that. Sorry, that. This is a private project I did. Well, so I'm what to say? I'm manager of a Bavarian brass band, and we had this music and beer festival with a large tent, 2,000 people. And we had to talk to the mayor and the town hall where we expect the emergency routes and where we want the people to, you know, park and so on. So I created this model, used model builder, added some panoramas here. So very easy and fast approach to do that. And here you see you can get pretty close to the ground, to street level, and this is dependent on your model size. Yeah, so if you have a really large model like New York, you can zoom in 6 times, always 6 times with that buttons or with the mouse. So for that small model here, you get really to a street level. If we go to New York, it might not be sufficient. So I think I have one for New York as well. Let's see. So, but anyway, it published the whole model. There are a lot of points of interest that are the underground stations. So, and here you see with 6 zoom levels, so zooming in 6 times, you get to that level. So this is something we are, you know, gathering feedback, how users want to get into more detail. Yeah, onto street level, for example. But at the moment, panoramas are the weapon of your choice. So let's see. Let's go to this one. In the US, I go to oblique view and try not to pan around too much. So that's pretty good. The model is large, but you get to a pretty detailed view already in this scale. Okay, and I think that's it from my side for now. So I didn't follow the questions. Eric, do you have an overview? Do we have some open questions left? Or
yeah, there were.
Anyway, guys, feel free to ask whatever you want.
There were quite a few questions actually, and Halil has done a great job of answering them. A few that early on that had to do with what's available. So there were questions about the iPad app and how that fits in with, you know, viewing scenarios in that way versus, you know, panoramas are available to anyone, but they're a preview. So can you clarify some of that as far as what's available to folks?
Okay, scenarios. So the isolated scenarios, which can be viewed on the browser or on an iPad app, those is not preview. Those are available since, I don't know, 5 or more releases, 2 years, I would say. But what you see here at the moment, publishing a whole model, including the panoramas, that's in preview at the moment. Part of the official release, 2016.2, but still in preview until we add some more features, and then we will be able to remove that preview flag. And the points of interest, what you saw before, that's only on Rolling Sandbox for testing purposes. So that's work in progress. Let's call it that way. Where is one of those? Okay, hope this clarifies.
Markus, can you talk a little bit about the iPad app and what its future is?
The iPad app allows to view a scenario. So let's say that part of the model. Yeah, so a really limited part. So it allows to view that offline. That's one advantage, if you will so. It allows you to add comments at the moment. So this, I would say, are the main differences. But we don't do many investments there because we see way more potential in the whole model viewer. The scenarios are pretty limited in technology, so we just do what is necessary to fix defects or issues, but we won't add new features to the scenarios especially. We will add a lot of stuff to Panoramas and the whole model viewer.
One of the attendees asked about the augmented reality capabilities of the iPad app. Is that something that may become available through the web viewer at some point, or?
Good point. Very good question. I forgot that the iPad app has an augmented reality mode. That's correct. Honestly, I don't see much investment in that part. So in the iPad app on augmented reality. And again, that is because there are physical limits for the app, for the scenarios actually. So the scenarios get too big and crash the app or fill the iPad with tons of megabytes. Yeah. So we do not plan yet to invest more on the scenario, on the iPad app, including augmented reality. So it's working nicely, but not much investment there on the roadmap.
Okay. Well, I know we have a couple of polls that we want to do, Markus, so I think we have just enough time to conduct those and wrap things up. So I'm going to take control as presenter, if that's okay with you.
Sure, thanks.
All right. And we'll still be able to hear you. We'll just be looking at my screen instead of yours.
Okay.
And before we get to the upcoming webcast, I wanted to take care of Markus's polls while we're still while what he talked about is still fresh in your mind. So here's the first one, and I'll give you a minute or so to provide your answer. It's about whether or not you currently use the web viewer. So please do us a favor and give us your answer to the poll that's been posted. Got about 60% of you have voted, so we need another 40%. All right, it looks like some of you have used it to some extent, and the majority haven't yet, but plan to after the session. So Markus, you're very persuasive. I'm going to close that poll, and the next one, we want to know, how do you expect users to access the web viewer? So please tell us your answer of how you would expect yourself or other users that you work with to access the web viewer. So we've got about half of you have voted so far. That number is climbing pretty rapidly. And it seems like laptop and desktop PC is taking quite a lead over any of the mobile options.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let that open for a few more seconds, so if you haven't provided your answer, please do so quickly. All right, and we've got one more poll that we wanted to ask. Who do you expect to be the primary group using this technology? Would it be the public, an open project team, including those outside, or a closed project team, just your company? And the open project team is taking a very early, very large lead. It's at about 85% now. And I'll leave that open just for a couple more seconds. And again, it seems like we have a very clear leader with project team, extended project team, we'll call it, including those outside your company. So,
Okay.
so thanks a ton for providing that feedback. Markus, I think you had one other question you wanted to ask the group.
Yeah, I'm and especially the team, we are always interested to hear from customers from you. What feature, what tool are you missing, or would you like to see next for the web viewer? So basically, I would say you can type in what you think in the chat box. That's always helpful to prioritize where we should put our efforts on. So what would you like to see next, or what important part do you think is missing in the web viewer compared to what you saw today?
All right, great. If you all could provide any ideas that you have there in the chat or the question box that you have available, and if you think of something later on after the webinar has concluded, please visit the idea station. You can post your ideas there as well. That's what it's designed for. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. And we from the product management side look at that closely because people can vote which of the custom ideas they like and don't or are not that popular. So this is really a good tool that was set up there. So Eric, thanks for that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone who's participated thus far. We've had quite a lot of activity on the idea station, and yeah, you know, if you're on the call and you haven't heard of it or you haven't visited it, please do. It's extremely interesting to see what folks are coming up with and how our product team is responding to it. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to remind you that we have our next webcast on July 15th, which is going to be traffic simulation. And that'll be from 12 to 1 Eastern, same time, same day as this webcast. So we'd love to see you there. And other than that, just wanted to thank everybody for participating, and we hope to see you next time. If you want to review this webcast, the recording should be made available within the next few days up on the community site. So please check back, visit the community site, and not just for the videos, but just to participate with the rest of the community in helping us make InfraWorks 360 better and better. So Markus, awesome job. Thank you so much. Halil, awesome job handling all those questions. We had quite a number of them. And thanks to everyone. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks a lot from my and Halil's side as well. Thanks, guys. Bye.